Hey, what's going on? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to do my reaction to UFC 303 and all the knockouts, all the breakdowns, and talk about some of the fighters and talk about everything that happened last night at UFC 303. Let's get right into the video. Okay, so the first thing I want to start with is Alex Pereira is him. I don't know what else to say. We all knew this fight was going to be a knockout. That was pretty much the only thing that was coming on our mind. This fight was on short notice. And what did Alex Pereira do? At the end of the first round, he hit Yuri Prochazka with a left hook, which probably would have finished him if the round didn't end. And then second round, he literally got in there. And about 5 seconds into the fight, he hit Yuri Prochazka with a switch round kick right to the dome. And Yuri died. Yeah, this fight, I was absolutely disgusted to see Herb Dean stop that fight that late. I know that Herb Dean is one of the best refs in the UFC, but lately there has been two better refs in the UFC. I believe Mark Goddard and Jason Herzog, who are better than Herb Dean currently right now, are just over with some of the past stoppages, and I know that they have their own issues too, but being a ref is really hard. But Herb Dean, the stoppage with Yuri Prochazka was awful. Alex Pereira killed him, and this was something that was absolutely insane to see. That switch head kick was insane. The first round, Yuri Prochazka looked really lost. I know he was talking about checking the leg kicks, and I know he was doing... Yuri couldn't get anything going, couldn't get anything started, and that was ultimately something that I think hampered Yuri's ability to truly get in the fight, to be able to get a finish or do something like that, because he genuinely couldn't get anything started in that fight. Alex Pereira was working on autopilot. He was looking the hooks, and he was going to the leg, and he was going to the body jab, and he was doing everything perfectly. But then Yuri just was so tentative that entire fight. And once Yuri started to go, his fears hit, and he got clipped by that left hook, and then Yuri got absolutely bodied by that head kick. Alex Pereira is something special. The fact of how hard Alex Pereira must hit. I mean, I know we talk about it, about Alex Pereira must be the biggest power puncher in the UFC, but he just kills people. You look at the shots that Alexander Rakic was hitting Yuri Prochazka with, and Yuri just, thought they were little pebbles. Alex Pereira comes in there and just beams you with a death beam from space. I mean, he's just unreal. I just don't know what to say about Alex Pereira. And last night I was genuinely, one, stunned about the knockout, and two, disgusted about the stoppage from Herb Dean. But ultimately, I'll go into it. I'll make another video about Alex Pereira just being him. I mean, I don't know what else to say about Alex Pereira. I was so impressed with his performance on short notice. We all knew it was probably going to be a knockout, but to do it in that fashion was absolutely insane. And the co-main event now, it was Diego Lopez versus Brian Ortega, but Brian Ortega had a fever, and what happened? They did not cancel the fight. Mr. 50K Dan Ige stepped in on 4 hours notice, who lives in Vegas. He stepped in on 4 hours notice, which is unheard of. He woke up yesterday morning and didn't even know he had a fight. That is insane to me. And guess what? Dan Ige won the last round versus Diego Lopez. This fight was absolutely insane. It probably was fight of the night, and I haven't seen the bonuses quite yet, but Dan Ige was this was such a massive surprise to me, and I'm a big Dan Ige fan. Against this fight against Andre Feely and Nate Landwehr, Dan Ige looked so good, and even versus Bryce Mitchell, he was arguable if he won that fight, but tonight he looked so good against an upcoming prospect in Diego Lopez, and this was easily Diego Lopez's hardest fight to date. Now, this fight would have been so interesting to see in a full camp, since Dan Ige not only hits like a truck, but his IQ is up there. It's a lot higher than I thought it was last night. But he looked super good. But going to Diego Lopez is so good. I mean, I say this every time when I break down Diego Lopez, his style and everything that he carries. Diego Lopez is one of the best fighters in the UFC, and his ability to think of submission threats and to go in there and get submissions and do stuff. He was going crazy with the armbar. He almost got the Darce in the first round. He is so fun to watch. He swings for the fences every single time. And I know in that last round he didn't look great, but I think that was just because he got really tired. And I don't think that's a thing to his cardio rather than just taking this fight on short notice. But ultimately, Diego Lopez is so good. Get both Diego Lopez and Dan Ige fight at the UFC Sphere. I want to go into a video of matchmaking everyone from this card, so we can talk about that then. But I want to see Diego Lopez and Dan Ige fight at the UFC Sphere. Obviously not against one another, but against different opponents. Okay, and then we have Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze. This fight, really, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Anthony Smith just looked like he didn't have a training camp. and Roman Dolidze looked like he had a training camp. But I think the only reason that Roman Dolidze looked like he had a training camp was because he was fighting Anthony Smith, who had no cardio, and Roman Dolidze didn't cut weight. So I just think Roman Dolidze went in there, did his job, and I think that was something that was truly going to be hard for Roman Dolidze to do, especially since that, or I meant Anthony Smith to do, especially since that he had to cut all the weight where Roman Dolidze just had to weigh in at 205 pounds, which is something that he doesn't do. He fights at middleweight. But Roman Dolidze had a good win. He looked pretty good in there, and he says he wants to fight in the two divisions. Now Roman Dolidze is going to get absolutely smoked if he fights at light heavyweight. So I think he should go down to middleweight, and I do think a fight against Khamzat Chimaev, who he called out, would be an incredibly interesting fight. Because I know Khamzat can't stay in the fights, and I know that Khamzat is going to need a fight sometime, and I do think Roman Dolidze is a good test for Khamzat Chimaev at middleweight. Okay, Ian Machado Gary versus Michael Venom Page, and this fight was not as exciting as I thought it was going to be, but for me, it was still an incredibly exciting fight. You might think, why? I just love the chess match that anyone has to go through while fighting Michael Venom Page, and that is something that's so fun to see. Ian Gary looked really good out there, and he did the correct thing. He just waited for Michael Venom Page to do something stupid, throw that point karate style. And I was sitting there, I was screaming at my screen, saying, why, Michael Venom Page, are you going in there and engaging in the clinch with Ian Gary? Because he is he has no idea what to do on the ground in the clinch. Michael Venom Page it's absolutely incredible to me of how little he knows how to do on the ground or anything in the grappling department. He is a kickboxer, taekwondo fighter. He knows nothing about Muay Thai, nothing about jiu-jitsu, and Ian Gary just used his full round MMA skills to propel himself to the victory here. Ian Gary had the rear naked choke in the first round, which I did think he was going to finish. He had the leg lock in the second round, which I did think that there was a possibility he could finish, but it wasn't in as deep as that rear naked choke. And in the final round, Ian Gary got Michael Venom Page's back, and ultimately that was something that Ian Gary was able to hold until the end of the round. Ultimately, I do think that Ian Gary should fight someone like Kamaru Usman next, probably as a co-main event on a massive pay-per-view card. It could even be 5 rounds, or he could main event some fight night card somewhere. It could be a main event in Dublin against Kamaru Usman. That would be such an amazing fight. Ian Gary is one of the biggest rising stars, and I think you give Michael Venom Page someone who is a little bit above him, because I think Ian Gary is one of the most highest IQ fighters, even if the people don't like him. And the last thing I want to talk about are the 2 prospects that I called to keep your eye on that did their job. We got Joe Pyfer and Payne Talbot. Payne Talbot got an 18-second knockout, and Payne Talbot always looks amazing in the octagon. He is one of the most fun fighters to watch. He had a nice little 1-2, sat Giannis Garamari down, and absolutely beat him to death, and that was something that I was so impressed with. And he got Joe Pyfer, who is fighting one of the most durable middleweights that the UFC has right now, and he absolutely swept Marc-Andre Barriault, and that is something that's a testament to Joe Pyfer's power. We all know Joe Pyfer had hit the cube, and he was one of the most, it was rumored that he was one of the most, had the highest score, higher than Francis Ngannou, and he hits like a truck, but ultimately it shows that one punch from Joe Pyfer in that first round is absolutely insane. Now Joe Pyfer has to prove himself going 5 rounds, and I know he did it against Jack Hermanson, but he did not look great in that rounds 3, 4, and 5, and those were ultimately the rounds that Jack Hermanson beat Joe Pyfer in. Now, I do think a fight with Payne Talbot could be on a main card of a pay-per-view. You could do Adrian Yanez, who he called out, which is an amazing fight considering that Yanez is a more proven veteran within the UFC organization, and Payne Talbot is now 9-0 and has ran through the competition. I do think that we should all watch Joe Pyfer and Payne Talbot very closely over the next couple of years, and I do think that both of these fighters could possibly be UFC contenders in the years coming up. I thank you guys so much for watching my UFC 303 breakdown. Please let me know what you think about the Alex Pereira knockout, the co-main event of Dan Ige stepping in on 4 hours notice, Ian Gary's win over Michael Venom Page, and who these fighters should fight next down in the comment section below. Thank you guys for so much of the support. We're on the road to 200 subscribers, and if you do support the channel or you want to support, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys incredibly soon.